Hi, welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, appropriately, and I am delighted to be here with you today. Thank you so much to all my viewers for joining me. The show today is dedicated to the very brave and the very courageous Jews in Israel, in particular on October 7th and afterwards. I think that we are all in the diaspora behooving to them because they not only stand for their own lives and for the state of Israel, but they also stand for the lives of Jewish people everywhere. Um, would like over the next hour, if everybody could concentrate on what we're trying to achieve here, together with my dear friend Nate Leipciger, whom I will bring in a moment, and my very dear friend Eli Rubenstein, who is the co-host today, is to get a sense from Nate, a Holocaust survivor, about what it is like for him to be living through these very difficult times where anti-Semitism has proliferated. We live in a time where I don't think Nate expected that he would see this again, but he is. And I want us to learn from him. I want us to take out of what he has to say. He's 95, he's a survivor, and he's an activist. So if you have any questions that you would like me to ask, you can send them to avram.rosensweig@gmail.com, and I will do my best to ask Nate. Let's bring him in now. It's really great to have you, Nate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And what's really nice, too, is your lovely wife, Bernice, is sitting to your right. How are you, Bernice?
I'm great, thanks.
Yeah, good. It's really nice to have you,
She's the
too.
reason for my success.
Right. Behind every great man, there's a great woman, right?
And longevity.
I also want to introduce, probably most of you know him. His name is Eli Rubenstein. Eli is the spiritual leader at Congregation Habonim, the senior spiritual leader. He's also the international director of education for March of the Living. Eli, welcome.
And you should say I don't have a lovely wife yet.
But you have some beautiful paintings behind you.
Thank
So the issue that we're discussing here today, as I mentioned, really it's that of the Jewish people, where we stand in the world, what our response was on October 7th and afterwards, and how we're dealing with the anti-Semitism that exists in the world, more so, I believe, than most people thought. I think there's an awful lot of people out there who are surprised at the level of anti-Semitism in our world today. And I'm curious, Nate Leipciger, our guest, are you surprised?
I am surprised. I shouldn't be, but I am. 80 years after Auschwitz is not a long time.
Right.
And when the vengeance with which anti-Semitism has returned has eliminated the gap between then and now. Today, like I think most people, I feel disappointed. I feel troubled. I feel horrified by the loss of life that we have witnessed on October 7th and the brutality with which it was conducted. It was unequal to, even ISIS didn't show pictures like that. The Hitlerites for sure did not. I mean, we had mass shootings. We saw children being shot in the arms of the mothers. But the brutality of people being decapitated, women being raped, people being burned alive, that brutality was new to me and horrified me. You know, the murder of 6 million people was done almost hermetically. But this murder here was absolutely showed the evil forces that existed then and still exist today. Now, I would certainly not lose hope. Even so, I feel terribly, and I see the pictures coming out of Gaza the soldiers, the Israeli soldiers losing their lives, and the Palestinians people being killed as a pawn of the Hamas, as a shield that they use to shield themselves from the armed forces. This is such unacceptable ideas in a civilized Western world that I cannot justify it. I'm so upset, and there is we are experiencing a time which I hoped never to come again. And where do you leave our young people at this point when they see all of this? And what do they see? How do they judge us? How do they judge world? How do they judge, what we say, never again, and here we go, and never again, it's here. How do we explain to them that all of the education that we thought would change the world did not reach certain parts of the world? Maybe it has a positive effect as to where we are, where we live. But then I see the anti-Semitism on the street, and I'm troubled. I'm troubled because I remember the anti-Semitism in 1933, anti-Semitism 1938, and I continue to struggle with what's happening. Why is it recurring? It is not the hatred of Jews alone, I'm convincing myself. I feel it is the ignorance of people who think that this war that the Hamas is waging is against the Jews. I don't think so. This is the tragedy, that I think that Hamas is waging a war against Western civilization. And we, as the originators, maybe, of the Western civilization, by bringing in monotheism into the world and civilization as it is, and being part of the Western development and contributing to the development of the Western world and civilization, to liberty and to democracy, we are the first target, but we are by no means the only target. And that's what I'm surprised that the world and our leaders do not see that. And that's why I think that the anti-Semitic outburst against the Jews, against the and pro-Palestinian, has nothing to do with the pro-Palestinian, absolutely nothing. The world, if the war ends today, it will not change the situation with Palestinians. They have to change it for themselves, but not by force, but by civility, by embracing democracy, which is being offered to them time and time again. And our world that we live in is a world of Western culture. And Hamas wants to eradicate it, even using their own people to achieve that goal.
Nate, I want to take us back 75, 80 years. There's a picture which I posted of you a few minutes ago, and it's back up there now. You were 17 years old. Did you have glasses throughout your time in 6 different concentration camps? Were you able to keep them?
I did.
You did.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that brings back a situation where I was, at one day I was beaten severely, and my glasses fell off, and one of my glasses broke. And then for the next year, I was walking with only one glass in one of my eyes. Of course, the other eye became totally useless, and retreated to the fact that I didn't regain sight until I had a cataract removed.
So I look at the picture of you when you were 17 years old. This is after your liberation. And the first thing that struck me was you seem like a real sweet kid. You did. You seem like a real sweet kid. Were you a good kid?
Well, I was a good kid. I was a street kid, even so I had soft features in my face. I knew how to deal with the reality around me.
Right.
I knew when to make use of what abilities I had. And I did use everything that I had to my advantage. And that was my skill as an electrical and as an electrical apprentice, my skill to speak German, my skill to be exact and being able to create order in chaos. That I use those elements, those traits, to the best of my ability and my survival. And this is, you can see the picture is the first growth of my hair. Before that, my hair was shaved, my head was shaved. And so this is the first growth. So that's about 2 months after the liberation. Before this picture was taken, I was deathly ill with typhus fever and terrible skin disease. I was in hospital for 2 months before this picture is the first picture that was taken after I came out of the hospital. And with new clothes and combed hair, I looked like a human being again.
So the reason why I said that, the picture struck me as you being a real sweet kid, because one of my friends asked me to ask you, having such a beautiful soul. I mean, I know you today, and I'm going to guess that you are today who you were then in many ways. You're just a lovely human being. You really are.
Well,
How do you, what's that?
go ahead.
How do you survive what you went through, and you're 17 years old, and humanity is in front of you, and you have to make a life for yourself? Only your father remained. How do you not hate to the extent that you say, I don't want to be part of this?
It's an interesting question. If you asked me that 2 days before I was liberated, I would say, I'm going to go out and kill every German that I can put my hands on. And when you asked me that question 2 days after I was liberated, before I got sick with typhus fever, I would say, if we do to them what they did to us, how are we different? How are we different? And I think that the same question must be asked, as to how do we compare to what is happening now even. And one of the comment you said that I was a sweet kid. Well, the couples in the camp thought I was a sweet kid too, and they took advantage of me.
Yeah. So
Looking like a sweet kid has its disadvantages at certain times.
I hear you. It's an interesting point that you make about prior to being liberated, wanting to go out and kill every German. I think humankind understands that. I don't think anybody would second guess you on having gone through 6 different concentration camps, losing your mother, losing your sister, and being starving and going through all the tribulations that survivors went through. So my question to you is, Nate, today, only in Israel, and when I say today, a few days ago, Mia Shem, who is a former hostage in Gaza, was interviewed, and they came out on Friday night on various different media outlets. And she said everyone in Gaza is a terrorist. That's what she said. And I'm wondering what your response is to that.
At this point, she's right. The Hamas had 17 years to turn all the civilian people into terrorists. They taught them at school since they were 5 years old, to put on terrorist suicide vest. They taught them that to kill a Jew was the greatest honor they could do, is to kill a Jew and kill yourself. So they were taught that the only way to go forward is to kill a Jew and go to heaven. And that type of indoctrination works. You know, even the Nazis, in their indoctrination of the Jews, and they told the world the Jews are inferior. When they were talking to the Germans about the Jews and how inferior we are, we listened. We heard what they were saying. And as a young boy, you know, I was influenced by that. And for many years after the war, I felt, yes, I was inferior. The Germans were superior, and I was an inferior Jew. And it took me a long time to overcome that propaganda. So I understand the force and the effect that propaganda has on people. So I'm not surprised what she said, and I most likely agree. Also, I'm not there. I can't say one way or the other. I'm just commenting on her comment, that her comment is genuine.
Ellie, I'm curious what your take is on her statement.
It's a troubling statement. Like Nate said, I'm not in the Gaza Strip, so I don't know intimately what their feelings are. I certainly wouldn't say they're all terrorists, but I have real concerns about their moral support for terrorism, because I think the recent statistics have come out that say that over 70% of the people in Gaza support, not Hamas specifically, but support the October 7th attacks. That is a frightening statistic for me. It's very shocking to me how anybody could support anything like that, regardless of what side of the equation you're on. So I'm very troubled by that, and I think that, and I was talking to Nate about this earlier, I think that this moment that you're sharing with me, where someone feels that way about the people in Gaza, and then you read about the horrific atrocities that are just mind-boggling. A friend of mine said that she watched Bearing Witness, which was a 47-minute documentary put together of footage from the atrocities. And she said, the atrocities committed by Hamas, I won't get details, make the Nazis look good. Can you imagine? That's what she said. So I think of that. And there's one emotion that you hear of people saying, that these people are so cruel and so sadistic that there's never going to be a chance for peace. And all we can do is hunker down and make ourselves stronger and make ourselves tougher. Forget about anything to do with peace, because it's a pipe dream. That's one response. And the other response I hear from people is, we can't go on like this. This kind of animosity and hatred and violence, the only way to solve this problem is through trying to foster peaceful dialogue and meaningful relationships between both sides. And that debate, which I see in the Jewish community, echoes in my own soul, in my own heart. And I like to hear, I'm leaning more towards the second option, because I'm a hopeful, optimistic person, and I believe people ultimately can make freedom of choice. But I want to hear Nate's wisdom on that question. Which pole do you think we should try to gravitate towards?
I'm a guy, I'm an optimist, and I am a realist. And I remember that when I came out of the hospital, and I went to see the Germans' neighbor that were the neighbors to the camp, the last camp I was in, which was in Mühldorf, I mean. And they were just ordinary people. And they said, you know, we know what happened. We had no idea what was happening. We did not contribute to it. And I believe them. And that changed my attitude. And I think that the situation in Israel and vis-a-vis Palestine is the same thing. I think that the Palestinians of Gaza have to be made aware that it is possible to live in peace with the Israelis. Just look at the situation in Israel itself, whether you have Arabs and Muslims and Christians and Jews live harmoniously together without killing each other. That is possible. The people who are maybe in the occupied territory, as they call, or West Bank, or the Samaria and Judea and Samaria, whichever term you want to use, people have regularly good lives. I mean, certainly their problem is that their economy is being stifled by the corruption of their leaders. But if there wasn't stifled by, and if the money that was sent throughout the world to Gaza and to the Palestine or the Palestinian territories, if that was used to create hospitals, schools, factories, to produce jobs, to produce agricultural goods, they would have a good life, just like any other country. It's only the fact that the leaders are misusing the funds. They're using the funds to build tunnels and armaments at the cost of the livelihood of the civilians. So yeah, I have great hope that their attitude, once the war is over, once they have an opportunity to see reality without being influenced by the propaganda, the terrorist propaganda, I believe that they can be turned around and that they can become just like us, citizens of the world, live in peace with everybody else.
Nate, I'm very curious about the human heart and how it functions. And to make my point, to ask my question, I want to read a quote from you, which I believe was said in a school environment. And you said, you cannot have hate in your heart without being hateful against yourself. And that's the big problem. When you are hateful, you become bitter. You resent everything, and that becomes part of your nature. Do you really not have hate in your heart?
Yes, I do not have hate in my heart. Somebody said that this is like hating somebody is like taking poison, thinking and hoping the other person will die. Hate is within you, and it doesn't. I mean, unless you act on it. Unless you act on it as you go out in the street and you try to kill somebody, that hate it is what it is. It is destructive, not only against the person who you're hating, but against yourself, because eventually you are going to suffer through it. So hate is not an answer to anything. I say that the proper reaction to terrible situations is anger. Anger, you should use anger to change the situation in which you are, to change the world, to make it a better place. Anger is a positive force, whereas hate is a negative force.
Ellie, you have a story to tell about that, right? Got to turn up your volume there.
I remember that moment on the March of the Living when one of the students was incredulous and Nate said, "I don't hate." And the student said, "Hate? You don't hate the people who did that terrible, terrible atrocity?" I'll never forget Nate's words, which he just echoed here, which is that the difference between hating and holding them responsible. I hold them responsible, but I don't hate, because hate poisons the one that does the hating. And so, what I love about survivors like Nate Leipciger is that they tell their stories, which is exceptionally important. But they're not just telling the stories; they're imparting life wisdom to the students. And that moment on the March Living is actually in the book that we wrote on the March Living. It was such a beautiful moment and an inspiring moment. So I do agree. There's a difference, as Nate says, between holding people responsible and hating. Holding responsible, yes, but hating is not a good idea, because hate poisons one who does the hating. Nate, can I ask you to share the story that you shared with me about your presentation at the school in Mississauga, if you remember that many years ago?
Yes, what was a very interesting time, because I was speaking to about 110 students, and I spoke for an hour, and I told them about my family. I told them about the ghetto, and I told them about what I suffered in the concentration camp, and the trouble that I had the daily, and how people were being murdered in the camps. And then after I finished speaking, One person asked me, after you've suffered, as you have just told us, why are you your people, which equated me with Israel, why are your people putting the same suffering on the Palestinians? Of course, I was totally made speechless. And I stood there and I talked to myself and I said, what am I going to do? Ask her how many gas chambers there are in the territories. Am I going to ask them how many millions of people have been gassed by now? Or how many people have been shot in a ravine like Babi Yar, 32,000 people in 2 days? How am I going to tell them that? I said, that's not going to tell them. So I said, I'm going to change and I'm going to do something. I said, obviously, I didn't reach you. I failed you. I failed you to tell you what the Holocaust was all about. And I proceeded, I said, just imagine. Just think, put the family in your head. Your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your aunts, all your family. And how many people you have? 30, 40, 50 people. And then in a matter of 2 years, they're all gone. And you are by yourself, or maybe with a brother, or maybe with a father, as the case was in my case, as was my case. And I say, just imagine that. And I stood there and I let them think about it. And then I said, I can't let you go home with those terrible thoughts in your head, thinking that your family is going to be destroyed. So I said, I want you to go home. I want you to go up to your brother and your sister, your mother and your father, or whoever you encounter, and say, I love you. And their first response is going to be, what came over you? What's happening? And you tell them what I told you today. And you tell them that if it was a difference of just a chance of birth, if you were born in Europe and if you were Jewish, you would not have those people with you. You would not be able to tell them, I love you, and you will not be able to appreciate it. I think that's what is my story. My story is that, yes, I survived, but the tragedy is not in what I suffered. The tragedy is in the fact that 6 million people were brutally murdered by shooting or by gassing, by starvation and by illness, for no other reason that they were born Jewish. That is the tragedy.
Nate, you said in an interview that you always tried very hard to get your father's attention and appreciation, stamp of approval, but your sister succeeded at that more so. Was thinking about that. When the war was over, did you have a different relationship with your father? And tell us what happened to your dad over the years.
Well, we had a completely different relationship after the war. Absolutely. You see, when first of all, when we were in camp, we were like two brothers. And when we liberated and we came and we lived in Germany for 2 years, 3 years actually, you see, our relationship was like two men. I was 17, going 18, 19. And he was a man as well. And we lived as two adults, not as a son and father relationship. We lived as two adults. We talked to each other, we confided into each other, and we did everything together. So that was a complete change from the time when I was a child. When I was a child, I was very much afraid of my father, because not that he was a bad man, but I was afraid of him because he would punish me. He would punish me for any small infraction. I tried very hard. I mean, I had a number of problems that did not materialize, that I didn't know till later in life. I had dyslexia. I couldn't read. I couldn't learn how to read. That troubled him very much. I couldn't see, and that troubled him very much. So no matter what task I did, no matter task I fell short of what his expectations were of me. My sister was brilliant. She could read. She was 3 years older. Read novels. She read Tolstoy and and other fantastic writers. And I couldn't read my textbook. So he was very much disappointed. And anytime I tried to do something to please him, I always fell short. So I didn't, even when he didn't punish me for things that I did stupidly, I felt his disapproval. But when it was in camp, there was I could the situation changed. First of all, I realized that he loved me, and that he was punishing me only because he wanted me to become a better human being. He was teaching me morality, in the hard way. But he felt that maybe words didn't get to me, so he punished me corporally. But that was the style of education at that time in the world, not only in Europe. And but after the war, the situation changed, and even during the war, it changed. We became comrades in the camps. We helped each other. We looked out for each other. We made sure that our back was always covered from an attack, and so we became like a different family.
Your mom was really beautiful. What was she like?
Well, she was the one that I hope I emulate in a way. She was gentle. She was loving. She loved me very much. She, if I got into trouble with my father, she's the one that I could go to, and she would protect me. She was very capable with her hands. She was very brilliant. She went to university. She went to high school when high school was a luxury in Poland, and she completed high school. She was in Lyceum, and just a pre-university course. And that was that. She's the epitome of my future, my existence. And I hope, and I know my girls, my three daughters, have emulated her, and they are as wonderful and as loving and as kind and as beautiful and as she was. And that is a function of me and my wife. And she is beautiful, and she is brilliant, and she is everything that I am not. And she's the one that keeps me on the and she keeps me motivated. She keeps me online. When I become melancholy, she's the one that pulls me out of it. When I become angry, she modifies. She moderates my anger. And so, yes, my longevity is rewarded by the family that we have together with Bernice, and the great grandchildren that we have, and the great grandchildren that we have. 10 great grandchildren with one on the way. So yes, our lives are full, and we are looking forward to the 11th great grandchild coming soon. And if it weren't for the outside world, life would be sweet.
Yes.
It's the intrusion of the outside world that makes our life not as sweet as it should be.
Bernice, are you happy with your decision of Nate as your spouse?
Of course I am.
How long have you been married?
Well, it will be, I think, 60 years in September.
Muzzle tough.
69 years.
Is he a good man to be married to?
It's always a challenge sometimes.
69
But
years.
we've had a wonderful life together, and I hope it continues for many more years. Nate is,
Amen.
he's all, you know what? I didn't have the same impetus to do things, to try things. Nate taught me to ski, he taught me to sail, he encouraged me to do things that I may have been too timid to try. So yes, I'm very appreciative of the fact that we had a wonderful life together.
And Bernice, what would you say you brought to Nate? What have you given him?
Well, I've given him 3 wonderful daughters,
Yes.
and I hope that I've helped him to live a good life, to be at peace with himself when he's feeling distressed. I've tried to make his life as easy and as happy as is possible.
It seems to me you've done a very good job of it. Nate Leipciger at 95 years old seems to be, despite the outside world, a very happy man. So well done to you.
Well, I'm almost 96.
Almost 96. Eli, one of the things that a lot of people are talking about nowadays is the Jewish family in Israel, because of the fact that on October 7th, it wasn't as though 1,300 individuals from different parts of the kibbutzim and of the southern region were killed. Families were killed. And similarly, during the Holocaust. You're a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. You and I did an interview a few weeks ago of which you told many stories, and we got great reviews on it. I wonder if any stories comes to mind about families in environments like that.
Well, I would like to remind you of the fact that Nate wears many hats, not just the physical hat he's wearing now, which we all identify him with. He's a Zionist, he's a Jew, he's a Canadian, but he's also a Jew of Polish heritage. And Nate, I remember you telling me a story, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's some people in the Jewish community, unfortunately, that have anti-Polish sentiments, and you're not one of them. And I remember you telling me a story that when you were being marched from Chorzów, weren't there Polish neighbors who were sympathetic to your plight? Does that ring a bell? Can you remind me of that story?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that there was a time when we did not know what was happening. We were already in 1943. It was July 1st, 1943. We have already gone through 4 years of ghettos, displacement, expulsion, with relocation. I mean, I feel with people who are being relocated like now and in north of Israel and the south of Israel, where they had to leave their house because their house is being bombed. I feel very much with them because I know how it feels to have to leave your home and to live in somebody else's house and not have the amenities and the things that you used to, and how difficult life is being dislocated. And I think about that. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm talking about, that's not what Eli talks. Eli talks about, I've gone all through that. Now we were in the last ghetto, and we finally realized that it's being total expulsion, total deportation. We're being pulled out of a hiding place where we were hiding. We were not allowed to take anything with us. It's July. We're going to be resettled to a place where we don't know what's happening. And we're only wearing what's on our bodies. We're not allowed to take anything. And we're marching through the street, and we're really feeling down. And going through the, the Polish city. And people come, there's suddenly a group of people being marched. They come and try to see what's happening. And on both sides of our column as we march, our Polish women, men, and children are standing there. And the scene that I saw was unbelievable. There are women standing there and crying to see us leave. Obviously, they know that what's happening to us is not going to be very good. then there's kids that are jeering us, and they say, "Look at him! Look at him! Look at that! Look at that old woman! Look at that kid running around!" And then there was people who were saying, "Prejadami, away with Jews! Prejadami, do Palestine!" They're saying, "Go to Palestine! Go away with you!" Those were those anti-Semites, which are still here with us today. And it was a difficult situation because, you know, I lived in Poland from all my life. I felt like a Polish citizen. I felt like a Pole. The fact that I had a different religion did not make me different, less of a Pole. I felt that I was a Polish citizen to right and to the benefits of all the things that the country had. And suddenly I see that my neighbors were wishing me that I had to get out of their country. That was a difficult scene. In addition to that, there were kids running around looking for their mother looking for their children, and you know, we in a huge lineup of people, and I remember the scene sort of etched into my head as the scene that is out of Dante's Inferno. It's a situation that is not real, but it was real because I was there. I experienced it. And it's hard to translate that in words to tell my audience as to what it felt like, what the moment was like, and how and why I remember it. And you know, that's all I can say to
Nate, if I can add two things to what you just said. First of all, I think that story is so important because it shows you that in Poland, there were good people and bad people. I know people who were saved by Polish righteous, where the husband wanted to give the person into the Nazis, and the wife said, "If you give them in, I'm going with them." So in that story, you see both the good and the bad, and you can't sort of generalize all of Poland was one way, and I think that story very much reflects that. But the other thing I've learned from people like Nate and many survivors is this incredible appreciation and love for family. Avrum and I have a friend from Kitchener whose father was a survivor, and his kid wanted to go to camp so much, and finally let his kid go to summer camp, and he would sleep in his son's bed every night because he so missed his son. And Avrum, you asked the story about family, and again, this reflects the love Nate has his family and the love that so many survivors have for their families. I remember hearing a story from a woman from Hamilton when she was a little young woman. She just became engaged to a man. The Nazis came in and took her fiance, and she was so devastated. She said, "I'm going to find him." And her family said, "No, don't go find him. It's too dangerous." And she got into a fight with her family, and she left on bad terms. She went to look for her husband, couldn't find him. She came back to her town. It was the town of Apt. Her entire family was gone. She never had a chance to say goodbye to her family and to say, "I love you." And she said, from then on, I learned the lesson. Whenever you say goodbye on the phone to a family member or in any kind of situation, always say, "I love you," because you never know when that's your last opportunity. And this love that survivors have for their family members is unparalleled in my experience. And I've seen that in Nate in his own retelling.
I want to tell you, my mother was one of three girls. You know, it sort of repeats itself. My wife is one of three girls. Her mother is from one of three girls. I'm from three girls. So it's three girls is a wonderful thing. She had two sisters. Both of her sisters were intellectual Jewish women who were saved by Polish men. They were saved in through 5 years. They were saved in different locations. They were moved from place to place as the word got to them that somebody was suspicious of them, that they're being hidden, or that they were working in the Polish industry and the occupied territory. They were working as secretaries. They were very accomplished secretaries. So their skills was thought after, and their husband both were engineers and very much skills needed for it. So they went through Poland. They went from town to town because they were hiding, and they encountered many good people and many wonderful people. But they also encountered some that would wish them harm and that they would denounce them. And the people who would denounce them, I want to talk about the people who were the people that were denouncing the Jews. Were they nice people? Were they ordinary people? And I tell you the story. When a family was being hidden, a Jewish family is hidden by a farmer, let's say, and the farmer was making sure that they're hidden, but the farmer had to protect them, and not only protect them, but they had to provide food for them. He had to maybe sometimes even clean their toilets. But and they were wonderful people who were trying to save them. But then there was a neighbor. But who was the neighbor that denounced them? The neighbor who denounced the Jew was not an enemy of the Jew only, he was an enemy of his neighbor. Because what would happen to the neighbor if he denounced his neighbor for hiding Jews? And he knew what would happen. He knew absolutely what we knew. The neighbor would be shot together with the Jew on the spot. So that the guy who denounced his neighbor was not only an anti-Semite, he was a criminal, because he committed a murder not only on the Jews, but also on the neighbor. And he may have wanted his farm or his house or whatever. So you cannot put all the people into one, and brush them all with one brush. You have to realize, and now, we all know that the good people way outnumber the bad people. But it doesn't take very many bad people to create a bad situation.
Yeah. Bad is loud. Bad is very loud. Where goodness is more humble and quiet. Neda, when you were telling that story about being marched through the Polish towns, what occurred to me, what I thought about was when on October 7th, when Israelis were taken into Gaza and they were marched in front of Gazan citizens, and they were heckled and they were abused. They threw things at the Jewish men, women, and children, and really did everything they could to make them feel like vermin. And now so many of them are hidden away in tunnels. And I see a very direct correlation between you being in the concentration camps on the marches. I see you as being a Jewish hostage at that time. And if I'm correct, tell us what the hostages are going through right now and tell us what we should be doing to help them.
You asking me?
Yes.
I don't know. It's a different situation. There's no polarity. And I cannot relate one to the other. It's a completely different situation. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe somebody else knows, but I don't know.
All right. Well, let's narrow the question down. We've all seen pictures of these poor, tragic Israeli figures being pulled out of cars, soiled, just totally at the hands of barbarians. You went through that too.
No,
What does that
no, it's different. No, it's different. I did not go through that. This is unique. I think it's a situation which we as human beings have never seen. It's a barbarism, and I cannot equate it with anything else.
Okay.
I think if I can follow up with your question, Avrum, it's like Nate. I don't really know the answer, but I know one answer overall, which is this: Hamas would be only too happy if we all became hateful, cynical, endlessly feuding people between the Palestinians and Israelis. That would mean Hamas would win. They want us to become cynical and hateful and angry. And we cannot let that happen, even though it's so easy to go down that path. So
Yes,
we
exactly.
cannot give up our hope for peace, a hope for a better world, even though, as Nate said, we're angry. But if we let that anger take us over and we become cynical and sarcastic and unable to express the feeling that we can never have hope, Hamas will win. So we can't let go of that hope. I still remember, Yad Vashem, I saw a testimony about a man who was a boy at the time being pushed out of a train on the way to Treblinka, and his parents pushed him out. And he said his parents' last words to me were, "Sei wie ein Mensch, be a mensch." And I always thought of that. Here is this family being betrayed by humanity, being betrayed by everything, and their last words to their son was, "Be a good person, be a kind person, be a person of integrity." And so whatever happens at the end of this, we cannot give up our basic decency, our compassion, and our hope for a better world. That's my overall response, however inadequate that might be.
That's why I don't want to compare the two sides. It's a different situation. I feel for the people who are being held hostage in terrible situation. My heart goes out to them. I cannot imagine. They're frightened that they don't know whether they're going to live 5 minutes or 5 days. That may be the same similar feelings that we encountered when we were in camp. If that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Of course, there's demonstrations, there's solidarity campaigns, there's putting pressure on politicians, there's writing letters. All of that, of course, we should be doing without question. But I'm thinking psychologically more in terms of your question.
Yes, we should be doing all of those in order to help those. I mean, we must not let go of hope that we can free those hostages, those Jewish hostages that are being held in those tunnels. And, they'll be scarred for life. As we saw, some of the people who came out have been traumatized terribly. And, it's a terrible time to live in this world. This world, it's the advances of 20 centuries in science and medicine and education and philosophy are wiped out by the feeling of inadequacy of being able to help those that need help most. How do you go through day without thinking about it? How do you manage to navigate through life without remembering that people are being attacked, people are being bombed by rockets thrown into a country that was not at war. The country Israel was not at war with either Hamas or Hezbollah, and they attacked a peaceful country. And whatever difficulties there were, nothing justifies what happened. And the problem is that the world does not see that. The world does not understand as to what's happening. They do not understand that it is a complete and utter abandonment of morality.
I'd like to address both of you with this following question. I stated a few interviews ago that one of the things that I was very proud of in terms of my leadership at Via Hafta was the launch of our mobile Jewish response to the homeless van, whereby we would take out volunteers every night of the week, and we would work together with those living on the street. The thing that made me very, very proud was that on the side of the van were quotes from Samson Raphael Hirsch, very poignant quotes about the unity of humankind and the Jewish response to Tikkun Olam. I saw that as a way of fighting anti-Semitism. I saw that as a way of raising our profile amongst those who really do not know who our people are at our essence: good people, caring people, loving people. And then comes along October 7th, and I couldn't help but wonder, between my expression of fighting anti-Semitism having to do with the van program, between all the programs that we have been running for years and years and years through the Jewish community and the outreach to Christian and Muslim organizations, did we do it right? Do you think that we're fighting anti-Semitism in the correct way? Nate.
I think we are doing, our failure is that we didn't reach enough people.
Yeah.
Not in our method, not in our trial, not in our attempt. It is that we did not have access to more people. And possibly now in Canada, when we have now many provinces where Holocaust education is being introduced into the school curriculum, maybe that will help. Maybe that will create a climate of understanding, and it will reduce the anti-Semitism that we see in our countries. I don't think it will change the hostility between people in the world as far as the Middle East is concerned. I think that struggle will continue in spite of our efforts of fighting anti-Semitism, because it is not about religion. It is not. It is about conquering the Western civilization. And no matter how much we like to think about it differently, that's what it is. And I have great hope that the Western world will survive, that will come to realize what really is happening, and they'll restore peace and dignity to the peoples all over the world, and that we can still live in peace, whether it's in Ukraine or whether it's in Israel, that we will have a peaceful existence. And that is my hope, and I'm convinced that that the goodwill of human beings is there to do it, and that anti-Semitism is just a very small scar in our community. It's a terrible festering scar that we can, if not heal, we can eliminate partially. And I'm optimistic. I really feel great, and I hope that this new year, 2024, will be a year of hope and peace and goodwill to all, and that anti-Semitism, which we see today, is really a hatred between nations. It's not, or ideologies. I would say ideologies rather than people, and that's what's manifested itself in this outburst. And I hope we can overcome it, and that we will have a wonderful year.
Amen.
Thank you, Nate. Beautiful words. Avrum, can I add something to that?
Yeah, no, just let me position the question for you once again, Ellie. You've done a magnificent job over the last number of decades, together with your colleagues, together with Nate and many, many, many other people, of constructing a program here in Canada called March of the Living. It's also international, where you work now, and taking thousands and thousands of young people to Auschwitz, to the concentration camps, together with survivors. I'm wondering, and for me again, my response was, Avram, have you done enough? Did you do a good job? Have you second guessed yourself at all since October 7th in terms of some of the direction you've taken?
So let me respond by saying the following. First of all, going back to an earlier question, I think the fact that so many Jewish people around the world have rallied to Israel's side through, lobbying, through fundraising, through charitable donations, through reaching out on the phone and by email, it's let Israelis know they're not alone. And I can't tell how many Israelis have told me how good they feel that they know that they're not alone during the struggle. So that's internally. Externally, one of the quotes I often remember hearing in my studies of Hashem with Professor Yehuda Bauer was, the only thing Jews were guilty of during the Holocaust was failing to imagine the unimaginable. Failing to imagine the unimaginable. We don't have that excuse anymore. We have seen the worst humanity can express, and we've seen it cropping up again in our lifetimes. Have we done enough? No, but we have to do even more. We have to double down more on Holocaust education and teaching the world about tolerance and anti-racism and discrimination and anti-Semitism. And I think having more and more people hear voices like Nate's is going to be the antidote. I often think of a quote from Henry Appel, who once said the following. He's a survivor of Auschwitz, and he said just incredibly poignant words. He said, there's only one thing worse than Auschwitz. Only one thing worse than Auschwitz. And that is if people forget there was an Auschwitz. And so I think we just have to do more education, more teaching, have more people hear stories from people like Nate. And I'm hopeful that we will overcome this scourge called anti-Semitism and racism in general. So I'm like Nate, very hopeful.
Nate, you're 95 years old, soon to be 96, God willing, and you're a survivor of the Holocaust. You've been an activist for many, many years. And at the end of a speech that you gave recently in Ottawa at a rally on behalf of Israel, hosted by the UJ Federation and other such organizations, you stood up there vibrantly, strong, powerful. One of the things you said, "Mirzen and do, we are here," which is a cry of many, many survivors. You know, Hitler, you did not defeat us because I'm still here. I'm in Ottawa. Me, Nate Leipciger, I was able to take the Prime Minister of Canada to Auschwitz and to cry together with him. You did not beat us. We're stronger than ever. My question is do you wake up in the morning at this stage of your life? And I know you've also said that the images are harder to get rid of in your head now at your age. Do you wish you could just put it all aside, go down and sit by the pool, drink a tequila, and just relax for the rest of your life till 120?
No, that's not what I want. That's not what I think. I think, what else can I do? What else can I say? Who else can I influence? How can I turn an angry person into a good person?
Mhm.
How can I change humanity? As I said, when I stood on that mount in front of 10,000 people, I have a responsibility. My responsibility is to the 6 million that did not make it. I cannot forget them. We cannot forget them. And like Elie Wiesel said, if we forget them, we commit the crime again. So that is my hope. That's what I tell my children. That's what my grandchildren, and they know where I am. And they know that every day is a new struggle to reach other people, to reach more people that I can influence positively, and to change the world. Because I believe that we don't have the choice of who we are, who we will be born to, but we have the choice of what we can do with our life. And what I decided to do with my life and the rest of my life is to teach what happened and not to forget the victims, and to talk about the good people in this world, and like Ellie said, we are living in a fantastic time, and we only hope that the situation doesn't change. Right now, the world is with us. Israel is being supported by arms from the United States. Many, many more people are vying for the survival of Israel than they are against us, and that's our hope. And we can't be silent. We have to keep on talking. We have to keep on reaching whoever wants to be reached. And so that's my daily yes. When I get up in the morning and I say, will I have an opportunity to do that today? And when I do, I'm happy.
Do you think you've done a good job,
Today,
all in all?
there's always many things that are unsaid, and many things that could be said better, and many things that could be less judgmental. But I feel that I've done the best I can. And I feel that you have done the best you could do by bringing Ellie and me together, and putting us on the podcast and bringing us to an audience. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do that. So maybe hundreds of people who are tuning in today are more hopeful, have been taken out of their comfort zone, because that's what I want to do them. I want them to be taken out of their comfort zone, to realize who we are and what world we live in. Because doing community, holding hands, and going toward the light, we will succeed.
Nate, in closing, are we gonna be okay? The Jewish people?
Yes, definitely.
Avram, if I could
We have survived 3,000 years, and we'll survive another 3 million years.
Avram, can I just add to Nate's words? When you asked the question, you're doing a good job. Nate has done an outstanding job. He has literally touched not thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of people through his writings, through his speeches, through his activism. He's gone on the March of Living close to 20 times. I mean, traveling to Poland and Israel with thousands of people is not an easy thing to do. And you mentioned his speech. It was a beautiful speech, and it was only 5 minutes. It was an incredible speech. And I want to close my part of this program with a quote from Nate's speech when he said, "Jewish rights are also human rights." Nate was reminding the world, Jewish rights are also human rights. Such an eloquent and important statement during this time. So thank you, Nate, for all your years of dedicated service to the Jewish people and to all humanity. Thank you.
So yeah, Yesher Koach, Nate. Well done.
Right.
That's the idea behind the interview. We're a little Oprah Winfrey here, you know. Eli, actually, I want you to be the period on this podcast by telling one of your wonderful stories. If you could tell us a story about Jewish hope.
Well, since Nate talked about Polish-Jewish relations, I want to tell a story about it's a story about how all of humanity should react to these kinds of situations. Because Nate and I've worked for many, many years together, and he's one of these people that looks at both sides of the story, and is certainly not in any way demonizing other people. That's so important when I learn Holocaust education from survivors like Nate. And there's a story about a Polish farmer and his wife who are woken up in the middle of the night, and there are a Jewish family at their door saying, "Please, please let us in." And the Polish farmer looks at his wife, and they realize this is a risk for their lives. They don't know what to do. They say, "Okay, you can stay in the barn for the night." And the Polish farmer and his wife let the Jewish family stay in the barn for the night, but the next morning they got to leave. They come the next morning, the Jewish man and his family about to leave, and the Polish farmer says, "My wife and I discussed this, and we realized this is a death sentence to you if we let you leave. So you can stay as long as you need to stay." And they stay. The Jewish family stays in the Polish farmer's house, in barn for a few months, until one day, completely by chance, a Polish farmer comes into the barn and he sees the Jewish man preparing to leave. Now, they had become quite good friends over this period of months. So the Polish man was surprised to see this Jewish man was leaving without any notice. He says, what's going on? Why are you leaving? Have I not been good to you? And the Jewish man says to the Polish farmer, "No, that's the problem. You've been too good to us. We found out what happened in a neighboring village. The Jewish family was caught being hidden by a Polish family. Not only the Nazis killed the Jewish family, but they executed the entire Polish family, the children as well, in front of the entire village. You've been so good to us. You've been so good to us that we cannot bear this happening to you. We cannot repay good with evil. We are leaving." And for the first time, the Jewish man saw the Polish farmer become angry. And the Polish farmer said, listen to me carefully. Put down your bags. Put down your bags, because what happens to you happens to us. Your fate is our fate. And in that story, you find the Polish family saving the Jewish family, then the Jewish family saving the Polish family, then saving each other. What an inspiring story for all of us to recognize our common humanity and try to save each other. So that's one of the most beautiful stories I've come across.
Nate, Ellie's good, isn't he?
He is very good. He's my inspiration.
He's mine too.
I learned a lot from Eli. I listened very carefully to Eli's skill of storytelling, and I hope that I come close to it because he's par excellence. He's wonderful. He knows. Not only does he know how to speak, but he also knows the silent spaces between his words.
Very good. Excellent.
Very, very important. So
Ellie doesn't like to be talked about, but I will throw my 2 cents in. What I love about interviewing Ellie or doing a show with Ellie is that he has so many stories at his fingertips. I simply have to throw out a word, being hope or love or unity, and he has stories ready to go. So I love doing shows with him. And Ellie, with that, I want to thank you very much for doing this show.
Well,
You're both far too kind. Thank you.
Yeah, we might be.
This is a loving because
it is.
Avrum, you have spent many years as chair of the Hafta. You have reached thousands of people that live on the street. You have taught generations, including my grandchildren, compassion, of being helpful. They were on the trucks They went on a number of my grandchildren went on trucks to deliver goods in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, to street people. And you have done that for many, many years. And, maybe people don't know about what you've contributed. This talking is very good, but what you did physically and what you did to thousands of people's life that you helped and that you saved, that lived on the street, on the margin of our society, is absolutely fantastic, and it's legendary. So I just want to applaud you for
Thank
what
you,
you are and who you are.
Thank
And
you.
I'm very happy that you asked me to come and speak to you, because being on the same screen with you and Eli makes me feel wonderful. So thank you very much for both of you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nate Leipciger. That was beautiful, and I appreciate it a lot. I think all three of us are somewhat humble at various times, so it's hard to take a lot of accolades. But on the other hand,
Avrum, you know what Golda Meir said, right?
no, what'd she say, Al?
Don't be so humble. You're not so great.
Very Israeli thing to say.
Yes.
We are closing off the show. Nate, I want to give you the last word, not to the thousands and thousands and millions of Jewish people and all the people around the world who love us and are our friends, but I want you to finish off by expressing your feelings to your family, to your wife Bernice, who's sitting to your right, your love for them, and how supportive they have been in your quest, in your journey to fight anti-Semitism. Just some words about your family.
My family is the most marvelous thing that could happen to me. Little did I know when you saw the picture of me as a 17-year-old boy, little did I know that my future was as good, as wonderful as it is, as it happened. Little did I know that I'll have a wonderful wife, that I'll have wonderful 3 daughters. I'll show them one of my daughters, unfortunately, was passed when she was 59 years old. She succumbed to cancer. But her children and all other grandchildren, they're such gems.
Son-in-laws.
And son-in-laws. Not only do I have wonderful daughters, but they had selected, they found 3 most wonderful human beings who are friends. Who heard that that brother-in-laws are going to be friends and go on vacation with other wives and have fun together? This is who they are. They're wonderful. And together, they brought up 9 grandchildren. And today, when I go on Zoom and I visit with my family in Canada and see them together in a vacation home and being together and having a wonderful time together and having Shabbat together and lighting candles and saying the blessing, and I have an opportunity to give them a Kohanic blessing over my grandchildren, my cup overflows.
Beautiful.
The most humbling of things that can happen to me is to see my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, flourish and grow and continue the traditions of Jewish people that have been here for thousands of years, and for the traditions and the morality that we brought to this world. Wagner was mad at the Jews and the Christians because he said the Jews and the Christian emasculated the strong man by bringing in conscience into the world. And that's what we did. We brought conscience into the world. And that's for that we're being punished. And continue to be punished, because there are people who do not believe in this type of a philosophy and this type of living, that you can live together with other people and not impose your will on them, but live in harmony with other people. And everybody is entitled. We all are children of God, and we are entitled to live our God-given lives without strife, without being suppressed. Because we talk about, we think about being suppressed today. You're talking about religious freedom. You're talking about the Iranian people who are being suppressed by the Ayatollahs in Iran. And that that Iran is the evil power that's behind all of this. And, I'm thinking about that, and I don't know how to deal with that, but that's to me is the Malchamovus of this world today, the devil of the world today.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really honored to have had Nate Leipciger as my guest today and my co-host, Eli Rubenstein. My goal, as I wrote them before we did the show, was to create an environment where we were schmoozing like friends and talking about important stuff. And I think we achieved that. So well done, my colleagues and my friends. I'm very grateful. And I would ask people to join me on Sundays at 1 o'clock. Next week, I will be interviewing David Suisse, who's the editor and publisher of the Los Angeles Jewish newspaper, a fascinating individual. And I also just got word that in a couple weeks from now, January the 28th, I'll be interviewing Hillel Halkin, who's a well-known Jewish author. He's in his 80s, and he has an awful lot to say about the Zionist dream, about October 7th and subsequently. So we have some really, really great shows coming up. Please join me once again, Sunday at 1 o'clock. You can see these shows recorded on YouTube as well as Facebook and other such social media outlets. Until then, Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. Be strong, be hopeful. And if you ever lose a little hope, then just watch this show, because there was an abundance of it here. And I think it's something, the message that we can carry with us for many, many years. This is a show about ordinary folk who have extraordinary stories to tell. I'm Yisrael Chai. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Bernice.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. It's a beautiful interview.
Yeah, thank you, Bernice. Thank you.